Chapter 1 Season 8 is kind of in a weird spot. I've seen nothing but love for this season, but despite that fact, nobody ever talks about it. But why is that? I mean, this season had arguably the definitive version of the Chapter 1 map, a balanced loophole that had a perfect blend of items that were both fun and competitively viable, amazing new LTMs, and a banger live event to boot. This is one of the few seasons of Fortnite I personally never played, and I'm genuinely quite sad I skipped out on it because there were so many cool additions this season that I missed out on originally. The jungle biome, boom bow, reboot vans, flint knock pistol, hell, even coconuts were added this season. So, as someone who is completely unqualified to talk about Season 8, I'm gonna do it anyway. We're gonna go back in time and take a critical look at this season from over 6 years ago to see what it did right, as well as see where it went wrong. So, like all of my other retrospectives, we're gonna cover a full timeline of Season 8 in way too much detail. I'm talking Battle Pass, map changes, loot pool, new features, LTMs, live events, major glitches, controversies, and so much more. So without further ado, it's time to put on our pirate hats and set sail to see whether Season 8 is hidden treasure or just fool's gold.
There be treasure!
On February 28th, 2019, Chapter 1 Season 8 released with the version 8.0 update bringing us a plunder of new pirate-themed content. As always, we've got quite a bit to cover, but before we swab the poop deck, let's take a look at this season's Battle Pass. The first skin at Tier 1 was Blackheart, who was a pretty decent pirate skin. By gaining XP, you could unlock more progressive styles that made him more piratey, and some more color options by completing weekly quests. I'm not the biggest fan of the first two styles, but his third style, where he goes full amputee complete with a hook hand and peg leg, it goes pretty hard. And his last few styles where he just fucking dies and becomes a skeleton is super sick. For how detailed and menacing his design is, it's pretty crazy that they gave him out at the beginning of the pass. It's almost like he was supposed to be at Tier 100 or something. The other skin at Tier 1 was Hybrid. As the name sort of implies, he was a really awesome hybrid between a ninja and a dragon. By gaining XP, you could unlock some extra dragon colors as well as more styles to make him progressively more nude. And for no apparent reason at all, Epic decided to make the naked lizard man absolutely caked up. In addition to all that, Hybrid also had unlockable clothing options by completing weekly quests as well. With all the color options he has, as well as just having a really sick and a, well-rounded design, Hybrid is definitely my favorite skin from the pass. Next up is Sidewinder at Tier 23, and she's actually quite underrated. Nobody ever talks about this skin, which is really a shame. She's a pretty badass adventurer skin, and that snake on her hat is a nice touch. Peely was at Tier 47 and is undoubtedly the most popular thing that ever came out of Season 8. Hell, it might be the most popular thing that came out of Fortnite altogether. I mean, it's a literal walking banana man. What more could you ask for? His design is simple, silly, and most importantly, advertiser friendly. That's a marketing slam dunk right there. So of course, since he was released back in 2019, Peely has been the primary mascot and face of Fortnite to this day. Peely in the modern age is nothing special, but for the time, he was one of the more out there skins Epic had made so far. Peely is honestly a good enough skin on his own, but what a lot of people forget about him is that he actually has a really cool reactive feature. Peely starts off each match being greenish yellow, but as time goes on, he will start to ripen and get brown spots just like an actual banana. And the weird thing is, out of the dozens and dozens of Peely reskins, not one of them have reused this reactive feature. So that makes the original Peely really unique. Peely is a relatively simple idea for a skin, but they executed him so flawlessly that he is no longer just a cosmetic, but Fortnite's identity. The next outfit in the past was Ember at Tier 71, who I also think is quite underrated. Though I am a little bit biased because she is fire themed. I quite like Ember, but I do wish she had a bit more personality or detail, as compared to the rest of the past, she is a little bit bland and forgettable. Master Key, the Naruto wannabe, was at Tier 87 and is an okay skin. But like Dream, I'd rather him keep the mask on. And lastly, at Tier 100 we had Lux, and by outlasting opponents you could gain more color options for her. I'm not throwing shade at Lux, I actually quite like the skin, but she has no right being tier 100. Her design is basic, she isn't intimidating at all, hell, she doesn't even fit with the theme of the season. It's blatantly obvious that at some point in development, Lux and Blackheart swapped places in the past for one of two reasons. Either they just really wanted to finally do a female tier 100 skin, which I'm all for empowering women, but Sidewinder or Ember would have been a much better pick. Or the much more likely reason why was so that they could minimize the amount of players migrating over to Apex Legends. If you remember during last season, Apex Legends, the quote-unquote Fortnite killer, was released and Epic were shitting bricks. So as a means to incentivize people to keep playing Fortnite, they made it to where if you did 13 overtime challenges during Season 7, you would have earned the Season 8 Battle Pass completely free of charge. And if Epic was willing to go to that level to compete with Apex Legends, they're damn sure gonna stack the beginning of the pass to keep player interest. I mean, what would make you play more Fortnite? Some punk girl, or a sick-ass undead skeleton pirate? While having Blackheart at tier 1 was a pretty smart move to keep player counts up, it in consequence also led to Lux getting a lot of hate. It's really sad because she's not even a bad skin. She just got completely fucked over by her placement in the pass. I can guarantee you that if they kept Lux at tier 1, she would have been loved much more by the community. But instead, she's remembered as one of the worst tier 100s in the game's history. Just based off the outfits, I think that the Season 8 Battle Pass was pretty good. And of course, there would be an 8th secret skin that would be unlocked later in the season, which we'll get to later. This pass was also the first to stop the trend of introducing a new major cosmetic type each season. I guess you could make the argument that it added animated sprays, but honestly, who the fuck cares? So, now that we've covered the whole Battle Pass, let's take a look at this season's map changes. The aftermath of all the earthquakes from last season have completely rehauled the terrain of the top right corner of the map, adding in a brand new jungle biome. So say goodbye to Lazy Links, Wailing Woods, the Container Yard, the Architect House, and the Metal and Wood Turtle. Definitely the big star of the season though was the Volcano added in the center of the newly formed jungle. It wasn't a named POI and barely had any loot, but it was still pretty cool. Because of the updraft, you were able to skydive around the interior, and inside a throne for the prisoner could be found, as well as the dragon eggs from the dungeon and Polar Peak right next to it. The whole volcano also doubled as an extra bit of environmental mobility, as you could use the updraft to easily rotate to other parts of the map. A river of lava flowed out from the volcano, and when touched does 1 damage directly to your green health and bounces you forward. While the lava did hurt you, it also made for a fun bit of mobility since you could gain quite a bit of momentum from it. The lava river ended up completely destroying the container yard, scattering shipping containers all over the place, as well as heading into the Tomato Town tunnel, ripping up the road and blocking the northern exit. Lazy Links got hit by a ton of earthquakes last season, causing the whole area to collapse in on itself, forming a large inlet in its place. Pirates have taken up residence in the area, now being known as Lazy Lagoon. It's quite a unique twist on residential POIs, as one half was a little pirate cove town, and the other half being a massive pirate ship. I do quite like Lazy Lagoon, but it suffers from the same problem as OG Loot Lake since Chapter 1 didn't have any swimming. The water does make it a bit hard to rotate out of the POI at times, but other than that, it was a pretty solid location. This wasn't the only area the pirates had claimed, as 7 smaller pirate camps were scattered all around the map. There was one west of Dusty Divot, northwest of Lazy Lagoon, one on the southwest side of the volcano, and the other 4 camps were locations the pirates just completely took over. They laid claim to the house on the hill west of Fatal Fields, the desert bridge northwest of Paradise Palms, the rundown manor west of Pleasant Park, and a house southwest of Tilted Towers. And it's probably just coincidence, but the pirate camps were placed remarkably close to where the cube runes used to be. So either the pirates are trying to harness Kevin's power, or more likely than not, they wanted to spread out the pirate locations evenly around the map for the new pirate cannons added this season, which we'll get to later. The pirates also hijacked a bunch of cars and have created caravans east of Junk Junction, west of Lucky Landing, and by the Desert Junkyard. The second and final new name POI added this season was Sunny Steps on the top right corner of the map. It was a pretty neat Aztec-inspired temple area with a bright orange and green color scheme. For how big Sunny Steps was, there really wasn't a whole lot of loot there. It also felt a little redundant since we had another temple-themed location not far from it, which I think was much more interesting concept-wise. I do quite like the design of Sunny Steps though, but I think it lacked quite a bit in personality compared to Tomato Temple. And speaking of Tomato Temple, it was demoted from being a named POI as the jungle swallowed up most of the area. The gas station, nearby house, and the whole underground section were all removed, leaving only the main temple area left standing. The new biome also caused issues with the block because, as you can imagine, a POI meant to showcase community creations doesn't really work well being in a high-density jungle. So this season, it was moved to the top left corner of the map, right over the motel, committing a second homicide. This whole situation really confuses me. As a live service game, Epic obviously plans Fortnite seasons ahead of time. They knew that they were going to add a jungle biome to the top right corner of the map. So the fact that they put the block there, knowing that they were going to have to move it the next season anyways, really rubs me the wrong way. Like, we could have easily had Risky Reels for an extra season, but no, they just had to kill off a great POI for no apparent reason. But anyway, the block for this update was Cryptic Castle by Hellraiser Gaming. It was just a giant castle made entirely out of assets from Polar Peak. Honestly, it's really not too interesting, but one thing to note is that the block got a really good change this season. Each block now has a legendary chest spawn that when opened, guarantees you a legendary weapon. Most of the blocks were never actually great drop spots, but this one change was a really great way to incentivize people to land here. Especially since the legendary chests always spawned in the same spot, making it easy to get a legendary weapon right after you land. A few of the expedition bases from last season were removed, namely the one west of Dusty Divot, southeast of Lazy Links, west of Paradise Palms, and the one north of the indoor soccer stadium. Expedition has now focused all of their efforts on the newly formed jungle, establishing bases all over the place. There was a recon tower north of Sunny Steps, an outpost north of Lonely Lodge, a dig site uncovering ancient ruins north of Lazy Lagoon, and a main base with a bunch of hangars north of the Volcano. There was also a building with a massive solar panel just above it, as well as a giant hot springs area directly west, also being researched by Expedition. You may also notice that there are a ton of these volcanic vents around the area which could be found all throughout the jungle, as well as one in a broken down house east of Salty Springs and one at the RV park which flipped over one of the campers. These geysers would go off every once in a while, launching you high into the air with glider redeploy, pretty similarly to a launch pad. East of Sunny Steps, a mountain was given a mean-looking face and an X made out of rocks could be found nearby. The formation of the volcano ended up destroying the Stone Man and Stone Woman, and the remains could be found on the west and east side of the volcano respectively. The bunker managed to survive the aftermath and can still be found in its original place, now overgrown with flora. Some remnants of Wailing Woods could be found north of Lonely Lodge, and directly east of it, a small shack had been set up owned by one of the movie stars from Season 4. East of the volcano, a hidden temple could be found, and west of Lazy Lagoon, there was a circle of rocks with different plants on each one, as well as two different Moai heads, like the ones from Season 5, except these ones are dripped out with shades. The top right of the map wasn't the only area with a jungle makeover, as Spawn Island is now overgrown. But let's move away from all the tropical differences and check out what else changed around the island. Similar to the Umbrella Mine on the north side of the map, a fork and knife-shaped hole was added northwest of Fatal Fields, which was a pretty cool way for Epic to acknowledge the whole fork-knife meme. A pig made out of brick builds was added east of Lucky Landing as a nice way to reference 2019 as the year of the pig, and a rabbit made of wooden builds was added on a hill north of Snobby Shores. At Tilted Towers, the snow has receded from the hill on the south side of the POI, and the building destroyed from the earthquake last season is very close to being rebuilt. For the third time. Over at Retail Row, the restaurant rivalry continues as Durburger has expanded its restaurant from 5 to 9 tiles in size. And some houses southwest of the POI have been redesigned to be more modern. That wasn't the only rework though, as the house north of Salty Springs has been redesigned, as well as a couple of destroyed homes south of Haunted Hills. There was also a white template house with a tree fallen onto it that was used in both Pleasant Park and Salty Springs, which both got repaired and slightly remodeled. In complete contrast, the Hero Mansion has continued to deteriorate, literally falling apart with even a tree falling onto it, and the same can be said about the Villain Lair. Strange blue vans have appeared at each named POI with a hologram of a player above it, as well as some type of card displayed on its side, teasing a major gameplay feature we would get later in the season. And finally, there is one final change over at the Pueblo town. Apparently, I missed a minor side story since it hasn't been documented very well, but from what I can piece together, back in Season 6 with Update 6.20, for no apparent reason, a chair was added in the doorway of the Red House, pissing off a few players. So, being the troll that Epic Games is, every so often they would sneak in an extra chair with an update as an ongoing joke to annoy players. I couldn't find any image evidence, but I'm pretty sure sometime in between Update 6.30 and 7.20, a second chair was added in the doorway. With Update 7.30, a third chair was added to the window, and a fourth added with 7.40. That brings us to now where a fifth chair has been added onto the bench in front of the house with version 8.0. With that being said, I believe that's all of Season 8's initial map changes, so let's go over the loot pool. Like every Chapter 1 season, Season 8's loot pool remained almost exactly the same except for a couple of vaults. We got the removal of the Sneaky Snowman and the Chiller Grenade since they were both winter themed, and the Shopping Cart, ATK, and X4 Storming were all vaulted as well. I love the Shopping Cart, but with all the crazy vehicles we have, yeah, it really needed to go, and the same can be said about the ATK. And the planes had plenty of time to shine last season, so thank God they got vaulted. Moving over to the weapons that stayed, for ARs we had the Assault Rifle, Scoped Assault Rifle, Minigun, Thermal Scoped Assault Rifle, Suppressed Assault Rifle, Heavy Assault Rifle, and Infantry Rifle, which is way too many rifles if you're asking me. For shotguns, there was the Pump Shotgun and the Tactical Shotgun, and for SMGs there was the Compact SMG and the Suppressed Submachine Gun. For pistols, we had the Pistol, Suppressed Pistol, Hand Cannon, Dual Pistols, and the Scoped Revolver. And for snipers, we had the Heavy Sniper Rifle, Suppressed Sniper Rifle, and the Hunting Rifle, which got its model change this update. Now, Fortnite's guns have always had super exaggerated designs, but the Hunting Rifle's model made no sense for what it does. The Hunting Rifle is a one-shot sniper, but if you take a closer look, it uses a magazine with a matching bolt action mechanism. Like most of Battle Royale's early weapons, the Hunting Rifle shares a model with a gun from Save the World, that being the Deadeye Sniper Rifle. Now, it functions very similarly, besides the fact that it can shoot up to 5 shots before reloading, which the Hunting Rifle cannot do. So to make the BR version a little more accurate, the magazine was removed and the bolt action mechanism was changed to have a loadable chamber. But back to the remaining weapons, for explosive weapons there was just the grenade launcher and the rocket launcher, and for items we had the Bush, Boogie Bomb, Stink Bomb, Rift-to-Go, Balloons, Dynamite, Gliders, Bottle Rockets, and Clinker. For healing items there were bandages, medkits, shield potions, slurp juice, small shield potions, and chug jugs, as well as apples and mushrooms which could be foraged around the map. For traps, there was the damage trap, launch pad, cozy campfire, and mounted turret. And finally for vehicles, we had the quad crasher, driftboard, and the brand new pirate cannon. The pirate cannon was a 2-seater vehicle that had 800 health and could be found at Lazy Lagoon, as well as all the other pirate camps and caravans I mentioned earlier. It was pretty much a remake of the shopping cart, functioning entirely the same, besides it feeling much heavier and being quite literally a drivable cannon. While pushing the cannon, you were able to shoot a cannonball in an arc that would knock back players and deal 100 damage on impact, or 50 splash damage if it lands near someone. And afterwards, it would need 4 seconds to reload before being able to fire again. You really didn't need to worry about its damage though, since there was no way in hell you were hitting a direct shot on someone with how unbelievably dogshit the aiming was. Instead, the cannon was mainly geared against breaking structures, as when shot, it dealt a ton of structure damage and was able to go through quite a few builds before stopping. But one of the features that made the pirate cannon really fun was that when shot, it fired with so much power that it would shoot you back. Now this may sound like a bad feature, but you could use this to your advantage by firing in the opposite direction you want to go while coasting to propel yourself backwards, which would give you quite a bit of speed. This is one of the dumbest movement techs I've ever seen, and I absolutely love it. But if you didn't want to do all that, the pirate cannon had a much better option for movement. By swapping to the second seat, you could load yourself into the cannon and launch yourself as a literal human cannonball. You would be shot at a set trajectory and do the same amount of damage as a normal cannonball, but while airborne, you were able to pull out your glider at any time and glide away. This was like the one feature of the Pirate Cannon that was actually useful. The Pirate Cannon wasn't really a good vehicle, like, at all, but it was more so just fun to mess around with, which is honestly way better in my opinion. It's everything a shopping cart successor should be, and I really can't knock it for that. The only thing else to mention for the Season 8 launch was that 50v50 and Close Encounters were out right now. The lobby background had a sick pirate theme with the Volcano in the background, and the wind umbrella this season was the palm leaf. It matched really well with the season's theme, and even played a nice tropical jingle when deployed. But that about covers it for Season 8's release. A very good launch overall. The Battle Pass, while not the best, still had some pretty good cosmetics packaged in, and the Pirate Cannon was a really fun new vehicle that, again, while not great, was super fun to muck about with. The map changes, though, were definitely the highlight. The top right of the map had a ton of empty space, and it was arguably the worst corner of the island prior to Season 8, so the new jungle biome was a really welcome addition. It gave us two pretty competent new name locations, and the Volcano was a really cool set piece that gave some much needed environmental rotation on that part of the map. I wouldn't say this is my favorite biome on the island, but I do appreciate that they jam-packed it full of all kinds of little landmarks. Not to mention all the other changes that happened all around the map. I think that this was an amazing first impression for the season, and it was only getting started. On March 2nd, Close Encounters was swapped out for High Explosives, and 3 days later, on March 5th, High Explosives was changed out for Slide. We also saw the new block Turtle Temple by Bottomus Prime. Literally just a giant turtle made from metal builds. I'm not sure if it's intentional, but it feels like a nice homage to the metal turtle that got removed this season, but it's a little hard to appreciate that when it's a complete fucking eyesore to look at.
We're rich! We're rich! We're rich! We're rich! We're rich! We're rich! We're rich!
On March 6th, the version 8.01 update released, bringing with it the new Buried Treasure item. It came in a legendary rarity, with only one being able to be kept in your inventory at a time. By itself, it did absolutely nothing, but when held, a red arrow would point you a little ways away toward a glowing beacon. When followed, it would bring you to an X on the ground that would need to be pickaxed 6 times to uncover, well, buried treasure. This chest was incredibly stacked, as when opened, it would drop 2 to 4 legendary weapons, a chug jug, some mats, and a bit of each ammo type. So yeah, the buried treasure was really freaking good. This was a really interesting concept for an item, as you had to give up a precious inventory slot for it and go on a wild goose chase, but it gave such good loot that it was very well worth it. Especially if found at the start of the match, the buried treasure could give a massive early game advantage. It definitely damaged the loot economy a little bit, as it could literally give you a full gold loadout, but they were decently rare, so it wasn't that bad. We also saw the useless piece of crap bottle rockets finally get vaulted, so it was nice to no longer have them rotting in the loot pool. The stone man and stone woman were beginning to rebuild themselves, and the fork knife mine was bugged as it grew a lust for blood and started killing people on sight when they went near a certain spot. On March 7th, 50v50 was swapped out for Team Rumble, and Slide was removed. Sniper Shootout and later Unvaulted were apparently supposed to return, but I guess there was an issue with the Game Mode API and they never ended up being released with this update. So we were left with good old reliable Team Rumble for about a week.
Stop posting about baller. I'm tired of seeing it. My friends on TikTok send me baller. On Discord it's fucking baller.
On March 12th, the version 8.10 update released, adding in Fortnite's arguably most unique vehicle, the Baller. Being able to be found at both Expedition and Pirate Outposts, the Baller was a one-seer vehicle that worked much differently than past vehicles. It looked and functioned like one of those hamster balls from that one dinosaur movie with Chris Pratt in it, except for the fact that they strapped a grappler to it. By holding the fire button, you could grapple onto the environment, vehicles, and even other players. You could swing around to get some speed and then let go of the button to release the grappler. So it was basically like playing the gerbil character from that one dogshit game. And like almost every other vehicle that has been in the game, the Baller also has a boost that can be used every 2 seconds that very mildly bounces you forward. Rather than being used for speed, it's more tailored toward offense, as when used it can deal 50 to 200 structure damage, and even 5 to 20 damage to players based on how fast you're going. The Baller is, in my opinion, one of Fortnite's best vehicles. This thing was insane for movement. Especially when you learn to use it properly, it was so fun to fly across the map in this glass marble. Unlike the planes from last season, the Baller was a horrible offensive tool. but even then it still managed to be a controversial addition nonetheless. The Baller had one massive advantage, as since you were fully encapsulated inside, it was impossible to take damage while driving it. But to compensate for that, it did only have 300 health. But even then, the invincibility it gave you was an issue for many competitive players. So what would end up happening was that in many endgames, there would be quite a few people balling around in their ballers with no care in the world. Sure, people camping in hamster balls is a little annoying, but compared to what we went through last season, this is just making a mountain out of a molehill. But still, with how unique and fun to use the Baller was, it's definitely one of the best vehicles we've ever seen. And besides the Baller, we got quite a few other substantial changes to the loot pool as well. The Heavy Assault Rifle was reduced in rarity from rare to legendary down to common to rare, but unlike every other time an item's rarity has been changed, its stats were also changed as well. The damage was nerfed from 44, 46, and 48 to 36, 38, and 40, and the reload time was increased from 2.8, 2.66, and 2.52 seconds to 3.08, 2.94, and 2.8 seconds respectively. Based on the stats, they didn't actually reduce the rarity, but rather they removed the epic and legendary variants and introduced common and uncommon versions while giving all rarities a 4 damage nerf. The heavy AR, I would argue, was in a pretty healthy state balance-wise prior to this update, so if that's the case, why did they nerf it so hard? Well, because of this piece of shit. The infantry rifle, when introduced in the latter half of Season 7, had bullet travel time, so it struggled hard in the meta compared to other ARs in the game. Especially against the heavy AR, which filled out the role of slow firing but heavy hitting assault rifle. So instead of, I don't know, vaulting the heavy AR, they instead dragged the heavy into the ground to make the infantry rifle a little more appealing. The infantry even was removed in the common rarity and had its projectile size increased this update, but even with these improvements, it still remained the worst assault rifle in the game by far. Epic was trying really hard to push the infantry rifle to players, but they were doing it in the worst way possible. It's clear that the bullet travel was its biggest issue, which was baked directly into how the infantry rifle functioned, and nerfing a completely unrelated weapon was not going to fix that. What it really needed was a complete rework, which wouldn't take long to manifest. The max stack size for clingers was reduced from 10 down to 6, and many consumable items got brand new animations. So when using a bush, you actually put it on, bandages are actually applied around your arm, and for medkits you just dump a bottle of ointment on your arm Resident Evil style. Minis, Big Pots, Slurp Juice, and the Chug Jug now all use actual item models and have animations where you pour it all over your face. This was a very long overdue quality of life change Fortnite had been needing for a while. Compared to the static and boring consumable animations prior, these new ones are so much more goofy and lively. It doesn't affect gameplay or anything, but it gives so much more personality and charm to each item, which I really love. We also saw a massive change to vending machines this update, which reworked them completely. Since their introduction back in Season 3, they allowed you to trade any extra resources you have in exchange for weapons or items. With version 8.10 though, they work the same as before, but the resource cost is now removed and they are destroyed after one use. So basically this made it really easy to get high tier loot. I definitely prefer how vending machines worked before, since I always end up with way too many materials and I really don't build much, so it was a nice little in-game economy that I found really useful myself. But I do see why they changed the vending machines though, since the usage rates were pretty poor and making them free was a good way to incentivize players to use them more often. Moving over to the map changes for this update, the building at Tilted Towers is very close to being finished, and over at Retail Row, Pizza Pit has increased in size from 6 to 11 tiles and has completely enveloped the basketball court. The Vikings from Viking Village have moved down the mountain, starting an invasion of Snobby Shores. Beginning the takeover, they ripped apart the military house on the south end of the POI and used the materials to create a fort in front of the building. A small tribal village has popped up northeast of Sunny Steps, and they ate a llama. Oh, that's gore. That's gore of my comfort character. On opposite sides of the volcano, the stone man and woman have rebuilt themselves and are now looking out at each other. And the last map change for this update was the new block Skull Island by Prudiz. I think the Skull Temple looks phenomenal, but there is nothing else going on here. It's super on theme for the season, but it really sucks layout-wise. And finally, for LTMs today, Team Rumble was removed and replaced with Disco Domination. On March 13th, a black helicopter landed on the island east of the Hot Springs area. It seems to be one of the government's choppers, and guessing by the telescope inside, they look to be surveying the area. A day later, on March 14th, the helicopter moved to a hill north of Lonely Lodge and was surveying the east side of the jungle biome. We also saw the return of not only the fan favorite Getaway LTM, but also the whole high stakes event from Season 5 itself. You were able to earn all of the old rewards from last time, as well as the mode showcase art as a loading screen and a backbling of the llama jewel. The mode worked entirely the same as last time, but now with an updated loot pool, and because working as a squad is a crucial part of the getaway, ATKs were added back specifically for the mode. On March 16th, the helicopter has moved south of the desert racetrack, and for St. Patrick's Day, a rainbow was added over the island. And on March 17th, we got the new Going Green LTM to continue the St. Patty's Day celebrations. It was the same premise as Solid Gold, but all weapons would be uncommon, except for the fact that you could find buried treasure, which was the only way to obtain legendary weapons. And no, this wasn't an oversight, it was actually advertised by the mode itself. This mode really wasn't anything special though. If anything, it's worse than regular Battle Royale since you only get to use weak weapons. Also, later in the day, Disco Domination was swapped back to Team Rumble. On March 18th, Going Green in the rainbow over the map was removed, and the helicopter landed on the southeast corner of the map to survey the desert. And a day later, on March 19th, the high stakes event concluded and the getaway was removed and replaced with One Shot. We also got the new block, Harmony Hotel by TTV Dabbing. It used assets entirely from Lucky Landing and was a pretty decent block with a nice layout contrasting around a big pond area. And then over in the jungle, the stone man and woman have begun walking toward each other.
Flint and steel!
On March 20th, version 8.11 released, and with it, we got one of Fortnite's most fun weapons, the Flintlock pistol. It used heavy ammo and came in a common and uncommon rarity. The Flintlock dealt 86 and 90 damage, with a 2x headshot multiplier that could deal up to 172 and 180 damage respectively. It had a fire rate of 0.33 seconds, a magazine size of 1, and a reload time of 3.2 in 3 seconds. The Flintlock, like most other pistols, was more tailored toward close to mid-range combat. While you could get away with using it at long range, it was very inaccurate and had heavy damage drop-off. But what made the Flintlock unique was its knockback effect. Every time you shot the pistol, it would launch you opposite the direction you fired in, kinda like the pirate cannon. So while the Flintlock was a great weapon, it also doubled as a fantastic utility item. You could use it to take height, or even launch yourself for a bit of mobility. Though you did have to be careful as you could still take fall damage after using it. But if you were in a scenario where launching yourself backwards isn't ideal, you could crouch to negate the launch effect. The knockback didn't only affect you, as when another player is hit, they would also be knocked back. And the closer you were to them, the farther they would go. The Flintlock is perfect weapon design. It's fun, it's powerful, it has its drawbacks, but when used properly, can be a useful tool for any situation. And it's not like it was overpowered or anything, as with its one bullet chamber and long reload, it managed to strike a perfect balance between fun and useful that everyone, no matter what skill level, can enjoy. Also with this update, we saw the Impulse Grenade be unvaulted, which hadn't been seen since Season 5. Kind of a strange choice, since if you really think about it, the Flintlock is pretty much just the Impulse as a gun, so this felt pretty redundant. And then the Scoped Assault Rifle also got a buff of 3 extra damage, going from doing 23 and 24 damage to 26 and 27 damage. Can't really complain about a buff, but the Scoped AR still really wasn't all that great. The one map change we got with this update was that the helicopter has now moved to a hill west of Truckin' Oasis. A day later, on March 21st, the helicopter moved to a hill southeast of Happy Hamlet, and One Shot was removed and replaced with Solid Gold. On March 23rd, Solid Gold was replaced with Classic, aka the original version of Unvaulted that just had the Season 2 loot pool. On March 24th, the helicopter landed by some ski lodges southeast of Frosty Flights, and a day later, on March 25th, the helicopter landed at Viking Village. On March 27th, version 8.20 released, and for the first time since the beginning of BR, we got a new trap that functioned as an actual trap. I'm of course talking about the Poison Dart Trap. This trap came in an uncommon rarity and was able to be placed on floors, walls, and ceilings. It worked as an offensive trap just like the damage trap, but had its own unique gimmicks. Unlike the damage trap, the Poison Dart Trap had quite a bit of range and could be triggered by an enemy from up to 3 tiles away. Now, to balance this out a bit, the way it dealt damage was quite interesting. The initial dart shot would only deal 10 damage, but afterwards a poison effect would set in, dealing 10 damage every second for the next 7 seconds, totaling to 80 damage overall. And if you were hit again while the poison was still active, the 7-second timer would refresh, so the damage didn't stack. It also had a reload time of 7 seconds and dropped in stacks of 1. Now, 80 damage sounds like nothing for a trap, especially when the damage trap does 150 damage in comparison. But the cool thing about the Poison Dart Trap was that it dealt damage directly to your health, completely bypassing shield. So even if you had full shield, you could be dead in seconds if you didn't have your health topped off. I've always hated the damage trap because for something that should be a trap, you know, something to set up and catch someone off guard with, it's often used incredibly aggressively and is generally just really annoying to deal with. But with the Poison Dart Trap, they designed it in such a way to nerf this playstyle. In a close-up scenario, if you are hit by the darts, you're definitely gonna die if you aren't fully healed, but you still have a pretty ample time window to take down your opponent with you, which makes it feel like it has a bit of counterplay to it. The Poison Dart Trap, while not as practical as the damage trap in a combat scenario, it's generally more effective as a hidden trap and isn't as completely brain dead to use like its predecessor, which I can really appreciate. Also with this update, we got not 1, not 2, but 3 new forageable items. The first of these fruits were bananas, which could be found in the tropical biome around banana trees, and they worked identically to apples. They took 1 second to use, and when eaten would heal 5 health. Next up were coconuts, which could be obtained by destroying palm trees in either the desert or tropical biome. They took 1 second to use, and when eaten would restore 5 effective health over a 1 second time span. They were much more versatile compared to other forageable items, as they were able to heal both your health or shield, but you did have to go out of your way to obtain them. The most interesting fruit added though were the peppers. They could be found around Joshua trees in the desert biome, taking 1 second to use, and when eaten worked like an apple or banana, restoring 5 health, but it also had the extra bonus of increasing your movement speed by 20% for 10 seconds. This wasn't like a huge bonus or anything, but it was still pretty helpful. The infantry rifle got a slight rework this update that made it go from by far the worst AR to one of the best. Epic had tried so hard to make the infantry rifle viable, but it was clear it just was not working. So they finally gave in and made it hit scan. They knew that with hit scan it was going to be a powerhouse, so with this rework it was nerfed as well. It was now given damage drop off, and it had its damage nerfed by 3 across all rarities. So it went from dealing 43 and 45 damage to 40 and 42 damage. A decent nerf, but it was inevitable that an accurate long-range weapon with high damage was going to be incredibly strong in the meta regardless. The Baller now no longer deals damage to players to make it a bit less obnoxious, but by far the biggest change gameplay-wise this update was the removal of Siphon. Since the tail end of Season 7 and throughout this first half of Season 8, a couple of settings from pop-up cup tournaments were being tested in base playlists. 50 effective health Siphon, 50 of each material dropped on elimination, 500 material cap, and a harvest rate increase of 40%. Now I feel like most of these changes were actually pretty beneficial additions, besides Siphon. As I've said before, I like Siphon. It's a great feature that rewards you for playing well, and it's incredibly beneficial for fast-paced gameplay and should be in every competitive mode. But it absolutely should not be in pubs. Siphon just causes way too much aggressive gameplay for a casual mode, which destroys a lot of the balance and strategy in regular BR. And this is the exact reason why Epic opted to revert these changes. While I think Siphon was unhealthy for the game, I am absolutely the minority because I cannot understand how much everybody fucking hated this update. It was so funny because you could just go to any social media page for the next month or two, and the comment section would be flooded with "Revert, this update sucks, bring back Siphon, revert the changes, Epic I hate, bring back Siphon, revert the changes." But what makes this even funnier is that these settings were still there, just in a different mode. You see, this update added Arena, a mode that was meant purely for competitive play, which had these settings enabled. So all the players that were throwing a hissy fit over this change could literally just go over and play Arena for regular BR with Siphon. Now granted, Arena is not pubs, it's a competitive mode. It's fast-paced, aggressive, and filled with skilled players. But that's literally what Siphon was designed for. Contrary to the backlash of the time, I think they handled this the best way possible. Basic playlists were back to normal, and for the people that like the tournament settings, they now had their very own mode with it enabled. I mean, you could literally have your cake and eat it too. I think this whole situation was blown out of proportion, but that's just my opinion. But moving over to the map changes for this update, over at Tilted Towers, the building has finished construction again, becoming an office building for no sweat insurance. The building itself isn't too interesting, but there is a diorama inside displaying its history, which is such a cool little detail. You got the meteors that hit the office building at the end of Season 3, the visitor's rocket which almost dive-bombed into the city in Season 4, the cube that rolled over the outdoor store in Season 5, and the volcano whose earthquakes destroyed the news station in Season 7. Or maybe the volcano cutout was foreshadowing another downfall of Tilted Towers. Nah, that'd be too obvious. At Retail Row, Durburger has expanded its restaurant yet again, now gaining a second floor, and on the complete other side of the map, the Vikings have furthered their invasion of Snobby Shores and have now taken over the second house. A little west of Happy Hamlet, a racetrack was added for the Ballers, allowing you to race others and track your time like the one in the desert. And like with every update, we also got a new block. This one being Tropical Treetops by Ginger J91. This block was really unique as it was entirely made out of tree houses. For how basic of an idea this is, still to this day, we have surprisingly never gotten a treehouse POI. I mean, we had the reality tree in Chapter 3, but it was kind of lacking in the house department. I'd say this is definitely the best block this season by far. It's not over the top or anything, but the design is super solid and unique while fitting in really well with the theme of the season, which I think puts it way above the rest of the blocks in Season 8. And lastly, 2 government trucks hauling excavators and porta-potties have arrived across the bridge from the Desert Pirate Camp. And since they're bringing digging equipment, I think we can draw a real-life parallel to the US government and conclude that they must be searching for oil. God bless America! For the LTMs this update, we not only got the new permanent arena mode, but Classic was removed and one of Fortnite's most iconic LTMs was added. The floor is lava. This mode was the same as regular BR, but the big switch up was that after the first storm circle closes, lava will start to rise across the map at a steady speed. So it was vital to prioritize looting at the start of the match. The lava works the same as normal BR, except for the fact that it's way more deadly, as it does 20 damage directly to your health, so high ground was essential. Of course, at some point there won't be enough ground to stand on, so you were able to build on top of the lava in this mode. And to make sure you don't run out of mats, you would get about 2 of each material every second. This mode was super hectic, as when the lava gets super high in endgames, you not only have to juggle the storm and other players, but also build enough cover to survive the rising lethal lava land. Floor is Lava is a simple twist on the game that managed to vastly change how you play and adapt to differing situations, which I think Fortnite is one of the only PvP games that could pull off this mechanic and implement it as well as they did here. This was just an incredible mode, and has now become a fan favorite LTM among the community. On March 28th, the helicopter has moved to a mountain west of Pleasant Park, and over where the government trucks were yesterday, a dig site has now appeared. Inside, there were a bunch of rocks to the ground which had 500 million health each, and like the ice bunker from last season, the community had to work together to destroy the debris. Later in the day, we finished excavating the area, and instead of finding oil, a volcanic vent was uncovered which in consequence revealed a network of more geysers around the area. On March 29th, the floor's lava got a couple of balance changes to make it a little less difficult. All weapons are now uncommon or better, so you aren't stuck with complete garbage loot, and you now have an extra 30 seconds before the first storm circle to upgrade your kit. The lava damage is lowered as well, going down from 20 to 15 damage so you can survive a few more hits from it. The helicopter also moved again today and has now landed on a mountain south of the block. 2 days later, on March 31st, the helicopter moved to an area a little northeast of Loot Lake, and 2 government trucks carrying excavators arrived in Dusty Divot, presumably looking for oil again. Because why else would the government be digging in the ground? On April 1st, Epic just completely ignored April Fool's Day and we didn't get anything for it. Last year, they made amplified impulse grenades and boogie bombs that made you jump super high, but this season we got absolutely nothing. There wasn't even a funny item shop or anything. It was really disappointing.
You can never be too good with a bow. I know I'm not.
On April 2nd, we got a content update for version 8.20 adding in the boom bow. It came at a legendary rarity and operated completely uniquely to any other weapon in the game as it was Fortnite's first bow weapon. The boom bow fired arrows in an arc and also had a charge mechanic. By holding the fire button, you could draw the string back to make it shoot farther and faster with maximum power achieved after 1.6 seconds of charging. But no matter the power of your shot, damage would be consistent regardless. The boom bow's arrow did 15 damage with a 2x headshot multiplier that dealt 30 damage. So if you hit a player or were in a close enough vicinity to deal splash damage, you would deal an additional 100 damage. The bow had a fire rate of 1, magazine size of 1, and a reload time of 1.3 seconds. Being a long-range explosive weapon, the boom bow was incredibly powerful. And the fact that the damage it dealt was primarily from explosive splash damage, it made it much more forgiving to use compared to a sniper. But by far what made the boom bow as devastating as it was is that it used shotgun shells as ammo. Arrows weren't an ammo type at the time and wouldn't be added until Chapter 2 Season 6 2 years later. So like how the crossbow opted to use no ammo at all, the boom bow needed a way to bypass this dilemma. Instead of, I don't know, maybe using a rarer ammo type, they for some reason decided to make the boom bow use shotgun shells, one of the most abundant ammo types. So with the boom bow having splash damage, decent structure damage, a common ammo type, and a fast reload time, it led to an incredibly powerful and spammy long-range weapon. I think it should have at least used sniper ammo or even rockets like how the boom bolt worked in Wrecked, just to make it a bit less spammable. But besides its ammo balancing issues, the boom bow was a super fun and strong weapon that felt incredibly rewarding to land shots with. Overall, I think it was another excellent addition to the season. The pepper got a massive buff this patch, increasing its duration from 10 to 20 seconds and doubling its speed buff from 20 to 40%. As for LTMs, Flora's Lava was replaced with Sniper Shootout, and for map changes, the government helicopter has landed on a mountain west of Dusty Divot. And inside the crater, a second dig site has appeared. Later in the day, when players fully excavated it, the ground shook and the hole was filled with a liquid which is definitely not oil, marking yet another failed attempt by the government to find that sweet, sweet dinosaur smoothie. Over by the volcano, the stone man and woman are now on opposite ends of the lava river, now looking out toward each other. Also with this content update, we were given probably the most iconic block to ever grace the game. I'm not talking about the good kind of iconic though. I'm of course talking about Mysterious Mansion by Furry Ninja. It was a fairly large mansion POI that kind of feels like if the Broken Down Manor by Pleasant became a full-fledged POI. It's a pretty decent location, but one thing that nobody ever mentions about it is that there is a pretty big hedge maze in the back. Mysterious Mansion isn't well known for the mansion aspect of the POI, but more so the mystery that lies within. It looks like just an abandoned mansion on its own, but when you take a look downstairs, a pretty gruesome scene is painted. There's a prison cell and a summoning circle which on their own really aren't that bad, but farther in the cellar, you'll see a tipped over chair with a rope draped above it implying that someone hung themselves. Scratch that, it's not even implied. In Furry Ninja's own showcase video, they literally show a player flying in creative mode, looking down to recreate a... How the fuck did this make it in the game? It's almost like they don't even look at the block submissions before throwing them in the game. You could argue it was a small detail that they could have easily missed, but no. This whole scene has its own dedicated room in the basement, making sure it's on full display. There was no missing that. So after players found out about this incident, it was posted to social media and Epic Games would soon notice. And a few days later, it would end up being removed. This was an incredibly bad look for Epic Games, as it showed that they really weren't putting all too much effort into picking block submissions, since something this big of gravity managed to slip through the cracks. I know that Furry Ninja is completely at fault in this situation, but Epic Games was definitely not exempt from blame. They knew the dangers of putting community-made content into Fortnite. People are stupid and they're gonna do stupid shit, and Epic knows that. So the fact that they didn't do enough moderation is kind of their own fault. And you would think that after this whole debacle, Furry Ninja would be blacklisted from working with Epic Games again, but somehow no. Furry Ninja, more well known as Fury Leaks, designed the Harmony Lee skin, which Epic bought the design for and intended to release during the Rainbow Royale event in 2023. Sure, who needs to do background checks? Let's work with the creator that caused a massive controversy a couple years back. What's the worst that could happen? They got caught grooming a minor. After hearing that Fury Leaks was trying to pick up a cupcake, Epic of course ceased their initial plan to release Harmony Lee, and she was promptly removed from the game files afterward, hopefully never to be seen again. So not only was this person a disgusting piece of human garbage, but they managed to ruin Fortnite community concepts not one, but 2 times. And as a lasting impact, we still have yet to see any community-made concepts come to the game since this situation. So because of this PDF file, we won't be seeing any of the amazing concepts that artists in the community make for a long time, or maybe never again. This is an utter shame, because some of the most well-designed and iconic skins to ever grace this game were sourced from talented artists across the community. As much as I would love to talk more shit about this guy and discuss the current Fortnite art community ecosystem as a whole, I suppose we should probably move on. So on April 3rd, the helicopter moved to a hill north of Tilted Towers, and a day later on April 4th, Sniper Shootout was removed and replaced with trios. On April 5th, 2 trucks carrying excavators arrived on the north side of the Loot Lake as the government is going for their 3rd shot at finding crude oil. On April 6th, Swordfight replaced trios, and on April 7th, Mysterious Mansion was removed after 5 days and reverted back to the previous block, Tropical Treetops. The helicopter also moved to a hill between Pleasant Park and Loot Lake, and where the trucks were a couple of days ago, a 3rd dig site has been set up. Later in the day, it was fully excavated by players, not revealing oil, but something far better. Below the earth, a massive metal plate had been revealed. I could be wrong, but I don't think that's a normal thing that's found in the ground. The government definitely figured this too, as on April 9th, the scouting helicopter touched down at its final location, Loot Lake.
Oh my God! The dead has risen!
On April 10th, version 8.30 released, adding in arguably one of Fortnite's most important gameplay additions, Reboot Vans. I'm sure everyone and their mother knows how reboot vans work, but when they originally released in Chapter 1, they functioned a little bit differently. Every single named location on the map now had a reboot van enabled somewhere around each POI. So now when a teammate is fully eliminated, they would drop a reboot card that would take half a second to pick up. While nowadays you have plenty of time before a reboot card expires, back in the day you only had 90 seconds before it despawns, which is not a lot of time at all. But if you did manage to get your teammate's card, you could turn it in at any reboot van across the map and it would take 10 seconds to use. Afterwards, the van would honk twice to alert enemies, and all players with their cards collected would be rebooted on top of the van. Each revived player would be given the bare minimum to protect themselves: 100 health, 100 wood, and a gray pistol with 36 ammo. After a reboot van was used, it would then need to go on a 2-minute cooldown before being able to be used again. I cannot understate how much of a game changer the reboot mechanic was for Fortnite. One of the worst parts about BR before this was dying at the beginning of a match with all your teammates still alive. But with reboot vans, this issue is pretty much solved, as even if you are eliminated, you still have a second chance. So long as your squad-filled teammate isn't a complete fucking moron. But this one feature honestly makes the game so much more engaging, as you simply just get to play more Fortnite. It's balanced, it's enjoyable, and it was implemented incredibly well. But there was one problem with the reboot vans. It was a completely stolen idea. Yes, developers take features from other games and implement them into their own, which is perfectly fine. But Fortnite copied this feature from Apex Legends, which mind you had only been released for 2 months. As far as I know, Apex was the first Battle Royale to implement a respawn mechanic like this. And seeing how they were Fortnite's biggest competition at the time, it just feels incredibly scummy that Epic blatantly copy-pasted this innovative feature from Apex, especially right after it was released. Reboot vans were a fantastic gameplay addition, but for me personally, it looks incredibly distasteful on Epic's part as to when and why they were added. But putting ethics aside, reboot vans are still one of Fortnite's most influential features ever added, and it's a mechanic that even in modern day is still essential to Fortnite's gameplay. But moving on to some other changes this update, the compact SMG's icon was updated to have less aggressive lighting, making it less bright, and it was angled like 30 degrees clockwise. Wow, so interesting. The infantry rifle was given another nerf, decreasing its damage by 2, going from doing 40 and 42 damage to 38 and 40 damage respectively. But as a compromise, they did give it 50% less damage drop off, so it is a bit better at longer ranges as it's intended. Over at Retail Row, Pizza Pit has expanded, now having a second floor, and even the iconic spinning tomato head has returned as well. The third house in Snobby Shores has been taken over by the Vikings, and we got the new block, Llama Sphinx by Prudis. Wait, didn't I already talk about this guy? Yeah, for some reason they gave Prudis another block this season. I'm guessing they did this because of the disaster with Mysterious Mansion and needed more time to actually moderate creator submissions. But out of anyone, why Prudis again? His new block is incredibly similar in design to his last one. I mean, they're both made from Sunny Steps assets, have a large monument in the center, and have a few small buildings sparsely scattered around. Llama Sphinx is not a bad block at all, but for a POI that is supposed to highlight the creative community, it's pretty counterintuitive giving one guy 2 blocks in the same season. Over at the Volcano, the Stone Woman is now swimming across the lava river to reach the Stone Man, and at the center of the map, a government convoy of 3 trucks is heading into Loot Lake. It seems like whatever that metal plate that they dug up earlier was, it must be way more important than oil since they're bringing 10 excavators this time. And finally for this update, we got the Buccaneers Bounty event. This event would work pretty similarly to the 14 Days of Fortnite event from last season. So every day for the next week, a different LTM would be brought back in rotation, and you would be able to earn a few free rewards as well. And since it's all pirate themed, the spawn chance of buried treasure was doubled for the duration of the event. So, to kick off Buccaneers Bounty, Sword Fight was removed and Fly Explosives returned. On April 11th, the Baller health was nerfed from 300 to 200 health in a hotfix to make it a bit weaker. They were originally going to add a feature to shatter the glass so the driver could be vulnerable while inside, but I guess Epic didn't like it in testing, so they instead reduced the health as a compromise. And for LTMs, Fly Explosives was removed and replaced with One Shot. On April 12th, the trucks have arrived at Loot Lake and are now unloading the excavators, and One Shot was swapped out for Close Encounters. On April 13th, Solid Gold returned, and on April 14th, the Getaway came back. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure this is the only time that this LTM returned and they didn't make it like a big event or anything. On April 15th, Classic returned as the last LTM for Buccaneers Bounty, and at Loot Lake, the excavators have now circled the POI. I never covered it in my Season 7 video because frankly I couldn't find enough information for it, but after the Butterfly Live event in Season 6, the cube fragments in the middle of the lake started falling over, and 2 of the pieces just so happened to topple on each other, creating a giant X in the middle of the lake. As in, X marks the spot. Wait a minute. Isn't that the slogan for this season? This is the kind of stuff I miss from old Fortnite. Just these super minor details that tease things way ahead of time that nobody picks up on. Viking Village teasing the iceberg, Tomato Temple teasing the jungle, and now Kevin's rotting corpse teasing the vault. The foreshadowing was absolute cinema.
Do a barrel roll! Roger that.
On April 17th, version 8.40 released adding in the epic and legendary versions of the infantry rifle. Why? I'm assuming that the high tier infantry was developed before they swapped it to hitscan a few weeks ago, so it's really odd to me that they were making more rarities for a gun that nobody liked. But besides that point, the high tier version of the infantry rifle, while sporting a different model, worked entirely the same as the lower rarities, just with better stats. The epic and legendary rarities did 42 and 44 damage, with a 2x headshot multiplier dealing 84 and 88 damage. It had a fire rate of 4, a magazine size of 8, and a reload time of 2.19 and 2.07 seconds respectively. So with this addition, one of the strongest ARs in the loot pool was arguably now, in my opinion, the strongest. For the first time since the beginning of BR, it actually felt like there was another rifle that could give the Scar a run for its money. The grenade launcher got replaced with the egg launcher for Easter, and more importantly though, you can now pet the dog. And all of the other pets for that matter. Going over the map changes now, Loot Lake has been fully excavated, fully unearthing what the government was searching for. A bunch of government agents have made their way to the POI, and a couple of small research buildings have been set up around the area similar to Dusty Divot. And underneath the POI, a shaking sound could be heard every 5 to 20 minutes. Over at Snobby Shores, the Vikings have now raided the 4th house, so in response, the residents have all moved into the northernmost house. In a last-ditch effort, they fully barricaded the property and have even built a lookout tower onto the roof to try to withstand the Berserker invasion. At Retail Row, Durburger has expanded once more and is now complete, having regained its iconic sign. With the 2 restaurants now fully rebuilt, the food fight is at a full climax, with both the culinary mascots now staring each other down with only a street to separate them. The house right next to this greasy war now has a hidden bunker built underneath the garage. Inside is a bunch of supplies as well as a bunch of dog houses for some reason. As well as this, 2 houses in Pleasant Park now also have secret underground areas. The brick house on the north side of the POI has a doomsday bunker way underneath the building, and the blue house on the west side has a hidden basement level behind the freezer. The stone woman has managed to cross the lava river, and the stone man is climbing down to see her. And for some challenges, a giant Durburger telephone was added west of Fatal Fields, with the corresponding pizza pit rotary east of the block. And speaking of the block, this update we got Cordial Courtyard by Gonzo the Wizard. Using assets entirely from Polar Peak, it was literally just a castle courtyard. Wow, so unique. It's not like we just had a castle POI based on the same location earlier this season. In all seriousness though, I do really like the design of Cordial Courtyard, but some of the blocks this season are just so boring. The real highlight of this update though were the LTMs. Team Rumble and Classic were removed, and to replace them we got 2 brand new modes. First of which was Food Fight Deep Fried, a mashup between Food Fight and The Floor is Lava. It operated in the same rules as Food Fight, except that the bases were now in the sky, and lava would start to rise later in the match. With the added tension from the lava, you not only have to build your own base, but also build your own battleground, which creates a whole nother level of chaos to the mode. But I won't sugarcoat it, it did have a bunch of issues. Endgames had a lot of lag from all the builds, and it was incredibly easy for players to camp instead mass amounts of builds. This prolonged matches far longer than they really needed to be. I think the mode was a cool idea, but in general, Deep Fried wasn't really received all too well by the community. Thankfully, the opposite can be said about the other new LTM, Air Royale. This mode was the big focus of update 8.40, as it had its own set of challenges to get some free wraps, and was by far the most unique LTM we had gotten at this point. So let's dive into this mode and see how it worked. Air Royale was a duos only mode in which you and your teammate would pilot an X4 Stormwing as one of the 35 teams in one massive dogfight, trying to be the last one standing to get your very own Air Royale. Each plane had 2,000 health, and touching the ground would destroy your plane. But don't worry, your plane had 3 lives, and you and your teammate had infinite respawns. The only way to get more lives was to hijack another team's plane and take them out, in which you would be granted an extra plane to your disposal. Each player had a slot in their inventory for a common pistol, suppressed SMG, and burst AR. But there were different rarity loot rings scattered around the skies, allowing you to upgrade your arsenal. By flying through one of these rings, you would either upgrade one of your weapons, or if you got a weapon of same or less rarity, you would just get ammo. Whoever was pilot didn't have to miss out though, as each ring gave a unique boost weapon to your plane for the next 25 seconds. A common ring would give you a grenade launcher weapon, uncommon would give you a rocket launcher weapon, rare rings would make your shots frosty, in which after hitting 2 shots on a plane, would freeze their engine for a few seconds. This could be incredibly deadly if you were close to the ground. Epic rings would make the plane shoot fiery shots that would deal burning chip damage to other planes hit. And finally, a legendary ring would make your plane shoot laser bullets that dealt massive amounts of damage. Taking out a plane would heal your own vehicle for 500 health, but if you really needed a fix-up, repair rings were also scattered around. They would fully heal your plane, as well as you and your teammate would gain 50 health and 50 shield. To make sure you don't camp out in the storm, it now also does damage to your plane, and to keep players vertically close together, the storm would also come down from the ceiling to make the battle zone even more hectic. Air Royale is one of my personal favorite LTMs of all time. The planes from last season were a ton of fun, but they didn't really mesh well with Battle Royale's gameplay. The fun part about the planes for me wasn't fighting other players, it was fighting other planes. The crazy dogfights from last season were perfectly emulated in this mode and dialed to 11 with all the crazy power-ups. The gameplay in Air Royale is just so good. No matter if you're the pilot weaving through the sky or the passenger princess gunning down the competition, this LTM was a blast regardless. On April 18th, a hologram appeared at the vault, and a day later on April 19th, a corresponding rune appeared at the desert edge by Lucky Temple. Over the course of the next few weeks, these runes would pop up around the map, requiring players to meet different goals to open the vault. This one operated like many other community goals, requiring players to deal damage to it. When 100 million damage was dealt to the rune, its health bar would be reset, and it would move a little bit forward, launching anyone on top of it. And by the end of the day, it ended up by Shifty Shafts. On April 20th, the rune made it to Polar Peak, and on the 21st, a second hologram has appeared at Loot Lake. Later in the day, the first rune made its way through Tilted Towers, having an incredibly close call with destroying the No Sweat Insurance office. It then finally arrived at Loot Lake, where it then inserted itself into the vault, locking itself into place, and immediately afterward, the Volcano started smoking. On April 22nd, we got the first teaser for an upcoming endgame collab showcasing Bright Bomber with Captain America's shield. The second rune has also appeared on the map right above Loot Lake, and this one required players to line up 3 lasers simultaneously onto it. There was one on the Volcano, north of Pleasant Park, and south of Shifty Shafts. To direct these lasers, they needed to be hit with your pickaxe, in which after enough damage is taken, they would slightly change direction. On April 23rd, we got a second endgame teaser with Fishstick holding up Thor's Stormbreaker. And a little while later, players managed to sync up the lasers on the rune, causing it to lock into place. Now the Volcano is smoking even more, with a dark red glow inside. On April 24th, the final endgame teaser released showing Raptor with Iron Man's gauntlets, and the Air Royale event was over, so it was swapped out for Close Encounters.
I am in Fortnite! Oh my gosh, this is so freaking epic!
On April 25th, version 8.50 arrived with the long-awaited endgame LTM. There is a ton to cover for that mode, but before we do that, let's go over the very few changes we got to BR. The egg launcher was swapped back to the grenade launcher, and the submachine gun's icon was changed to more closely resemble the icon it had when it first released. On the east side of Salty Springs, a 4th hidden bunker was added underneath the staircase of a brick house. And the secret area just looks like a second house, which is kinda funny. We also got the new block, Tricky Tracks by Callum Stewart. I don't even care if it wasn't even a great spot for loot. Having a roller coaster POI is freaking awesome, and it's just super unique in general. The Stone Man is now swimming over to reach the Stone Woman, and over at Loot Lake, a chalkboard has appeared in one of the research buildings, confirming that the submerged metal structure is indeed a giant vault. A third hologram has appeared in the center of the POI, and a little while later, Rune 3 crashed into Yonder Yard's dance club. Instead of beating the shit out of it like with the other runes, players needed to dance around the area to fill up its meter. Later in the day, once we jiggied hard enough, it went over to Loot Lake, activating itself and making the volcano smoke darker and glow more red. And then for LTMs, Close Encounters and Food Fight Deep Fried were removed, and replacing them was Team Rumble and the new Endgame LTM to coincide with Avengers Endgame releasing the next day. This mode was like an expanded version of the Infinity Gauntlet LTM from Season 4, but with way more content. While it did base itself off of Infinity Gauntlet, Endgame worked completely differently. Instead of operating like a traditional BR LTM, it was a big team game mode like Team Rumble. There were 40 people per match and infinite respawns, with 20 people on the hero side and 20 people on Thanos' side. Each team had differing stats, weaponry, and goals, so let's cover the villains team first. On Thanos' side, everyone would spawn as a Chitauri with 125 health and shield. You wouldn't be able to open chests or pick up items, but instead you would start the match with the Chitauri laser rifle, Chitauri energy launcher, and a Chitauri jetpack. They all were mythic rarity and had infinite ammo. The Chitauri jetpack was just a reskinned jetpack, but the laser rifle and energy launcher were both brand new weapons designed specifically for this mode. The Chitauri laser rifle was a fast-firing automatic AR meant for medium to long range. It dealt 75 damage, had a headshot multiplier of 1.2 that dealt 90 damage, and a fire rate of 4.5. The laser rifle had very little recoil, and similar to the minigun, it could be fired for 7 seconds straight before needing to cooldown for 1.8 seconds. And then the Chitauri energy launcher was an explosive weapon that needed to be charged for 1 second before unleashing an explosive projectile. It dealt 100 damage to players, 600 damage to structures, and had a fire rate of 1. So the Chitauri basically had an accurate minigun, charged rocket launcher, and a jetpack. That is a stacked loadout right there. While the match goes on though, Infinity Stones would periodically fall from the sky, taking 5 seconds to pick up. Each stone increased every Chitauri's max health and shield by 25, so by the end of the match when all 6 stones were picked up, the Chitauri would end up having 550 hit points. The goal for the Chitauri was to acquire all 6 Infinity Stones, which would cause the heroes to lose the ability to respawn. But the first person to pick up an Infinity Stone got to become Thanos. He worked exactly like how he did in Season 4, still having his punch, ground pound, laser, and super jump, but the cool thing this LTM added was that each Infinity Stone boosted Thanos in a unique way. The Reality Stone would double his health and shield. The Soul Stone gave him Siphon for his shield. The Mind Stone doubled his jump height. The Space Stone tripled his ground pound area of effect and sextupled the damage. The Time Stone added knockback to his punch and tripled its damage. And the Power Stone gave a 6 times damage multiplier to his laser. Thanos was crazy powerful already, but with all these buffs he got over the course of the match, it was just a slaughter fest. But if Thanos did manage to be eliminated, after 30 seconds another Chitauri would be picked at random to become him, and he would be unleashed upon the map again. Moving over to the hero's side, their goal was to stop the Chitauri from getting the Infinity Stones, and if they eliminate 100 Chitauri, they will no longer be able to respawn. Everyone on the hero team has 300 health and shield, and starts the match with a rare assault rifle, rare tactical shotgun, and an Adventure's Buried Treasure. These could have also been found as floor loot as well, and it was literally just the buried treasure except that it would drop one of the 4 new Adventures mythics. Captain America's shield, Hawkeye's bow, Iron Man's repulsors, and Thor's Stormbreaker. These mythics were the only weapons that could be found in this mode, and they could be obtained from these buried treasure chests, regular chests, and floor loot. Captain America's shield was a brand new weapon added working just like how it does in the movies. While holding it, it increased your movement speed and jump height, and if you held down the aim button, you could use the shield to block incoming damage. By using the fire button, you would throw the shield and it would ricochet off objects and then boomerang back to you. The throw attack did 175 damage to players, 100 structure damage, and had a fire rate of 2. It was quite hard to hit opponents with it because of how slow it moved, but if you were close enough to an enemy, it would lock onto them, making it a bit easier to use. And then there was Hawkeye's bow, which was literally just the boom bow with a grappler strapped onto it, which could be used with an alternate fire button. It had the exact same stats as the boom bow, except that the explosion damage was doubled. Iron Man's repulsors were yet another entirely unique item made exclusively for this mode. It shot lasers that dealt 45 damage and had a fire rate of 2. It didn't deal headshot damage because at closer ranges it literally gave you aimbot. The repulsors also had an alternate ability that when used would launch you into the air and let you hover down, stopping fall damage. Even without the crit damage, it was still incredibly busted, as with the aimbot and height advantage, you could absolutely laser the Chitauri, so the damage was later nerfed from 45 to 35. And lastly, there was Thor's Stormbreaker, which was pretty much a reskinned Infinity Blade. Like the Infinity Blade, it increased your movement speed and harvested mats. It had a swing attack that dealt 200 damage, 600 structure damage, and had a fire rate of 1, a leap attack that launched you in the air, dealing 150 damage and 600 structure damage, but unique to the Stormbreaker was a throw attack that lobbed the axe in an arc, and it would fly back to you when it hit something, dealing 95 damage and 600 structure damage. This was by far the weakest of the 4 mythics because it was primarily a melee weapon and it didn't have aimbot. So it was later heavily buffed. The swing attack's damage was increased from 200 to 225, the leap attack damage was increased from 150 to 200, and the lob attack damage was increased from 95 to 100. So that, in a nutshell, was the endgame LTM. An incredibly high quality and fun mode all around the board. They put way too much effort for just an LTM that was going to be in the game for less than 2 weeks. Sure, a lot of it was recycled content, but they still added so many unique items just for this one mode. But if they were going to go all out for a collab, Endgame was definitely the smartest decision. Especially since that was when the MCU was at its all-time peak. Back when Marvel could actually make movies that aren't utter dog shit. The LTM itself was pretty balanced in a strange way. At the start of the match, the heroes were really strong. But as the game went on, the Chitauri would unleash Thanos and become more and more powerful over time. Of course, everyone wanted to be Thanos, but whether you were a Chitauri or a hero, you were given a bunch of new items to play around with to make it worth your while. This was such a clever way to bring back old collab content and put a new spin on it that made it even more fun in almost every way. My only gripe is that Epic put all their eggs into one basket for this LTM, so BR didn't get any new gameplay additions this update. On April 27th, a 4th hologram appeared at Loot Lake, and inside one of the outpost buildings, there was a wall of monitors, and an image of what appears to be a bouncer has popped up on one of the screens. On April 28th, the 4th rune has appeared on a hill west of Loot Lake, and had a 3x3 colored tile floor beneath it. This one required players to hit the squares and change them all to one color. By the end of the day, the pad was turned completely blue and the rune went over to Loot Lake and placed itself into the vault, which in consequence caused the volcano to smoke even more. On April 29th, a second monitor is now displaying the drum gun, and on April 30th, a 5th hologram has appeared at Loot Lake with a 3rd monitor now displaying the X4 Stormwing. There was also a balance change to the endgame LTM, increasing the pickup time of the Infinity Stones from 5 to 7 seconds. On May 1st, we got a batch of new map changes and the new block, Alien Sanctuary by Pro Spartaner. The giant space knight is really fucking cool, but the rest of it is pretty uninteresting. The other structures are really basic and there's barely any of them around. Pro Spartaner, you are a fantastic artist, just not a very good architect. Over at the volcano, the stone man has finished crossing the river, and after almost 2 seasons, the rock couple is now finally together. The volcano is now causing the whole island to shake, with the earthquakes being especially strong near it. It's also beeping red and spewing lava, with the 5th rune now appearing inside of it. This one had a meter to it similar to the one at the dance club, but this time it required you to drop mats and ammo into the lava to feed the volcano. Your efforts wouldn't go unrewarded though, as it would give you 1 health or shield every 2 resources you throw in. So for example, if you threw in 50 wood, you would get back 25 effective health. Over at Loot Lake, a 4th monitor is now showing the TAC SMG, and later in the day, the grappler has appeared on a 5th monitor. On May 2nd, the last update of the season, version 8.51 released, and with it, we got the new Shadow Bomb. It came in an uncommon rarity, had a drop stack of 3, and a max stack size of 6. When a Shadow Bomb is used, its user goes into shadow form where they are slightly invisible, almost like a Shadow Stone. So for the next 6 seconds, you wouldn't be able to use items or build, but you would be hard to see, have increased movement speed, and be given the ability to double jump and wall jump, which were able to be chained together for some really cool movement tech. Near the end of the duration, you would start to pulse gray to tell you that the effect is almost over, as well as to visually alert enemies where you are. Fortnite is notoriously bad at making invisibility items. Like, really bad. But this is one of the few good ones. Sure, you're not fully invisible, but you still are pretty hard to see, and with the added movement, it makes it really useful whether you need a quick getaway, or want to utilize the element of surprise. But even if you weren't looking for stealth, it's still a pretty useful movement item as it increases your base speed quite a lot. Overall, it's just a really solid item for any situation. On May 3rd, the volcano finished its really big lunch, and the 5th and final rune has now been placed into the vault. The Volcano smoke is even more fiery, and a 24 countdown has appeared over Loot Lake. The 6th monitor in the lab now also shows an image of the Infinity Blade. 24 long hours later, on May the 4th, the Unvaulting Live event finally took place. In this event, the vault in the center of Loot Lake opened up, letting players enter. Inside, we are taken back to the in-between from the Butterfly Live event from Season 6. At least I think it's the in-between. If I'm wrong, lore people, please correct me. But inside, we get our first glimpse at the 0 point, and in front of it is a desk with a mysterious mask on it, which is later revealed to be Singularity. More importantly though, there's a bunch of pillars, each containing one of the 6 items that were displayed on the monitors, and the community would vote on what item would return to the game by smashing it with their pickaxe. We're gonna pause the event here for just a sec and take a quick analytical approach to this decision. Now, we had the option between the Bouncer, Drum Gun, Grappler, Infinity Blade, Tactical SMG, and X4 Stormwing. I think the least likely item to win was probably the Infinity Blade. When it originally released, it got so much backlash that it had to be removed after just a couple of days. So, to no one's surprise, no one really voted for this thing. Though I am quite interested on how they would have implemented it back into the game. Like, would they have put it back in the pedestal at Polar Peak, or would it spawn from chests like in the Sword Fight LTM? An evil, twisted part of me does kinda wish it got picked, because it would have been fucking hysterical seeing this abomination back in the game just to piss everyone off.
Sing, 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 sing!
And then there were the planes, which also had a pretty slim chance of winning, because we just had them last season and everybody was pretty sick of them. And if you were one of the freaks that enjoyed the planes, we just had a phenomenal LTM centered around them just a few weeks ago. So there wasn't really a good reason to pick them. The Grappler would have been a decent choice, but then again, we just had it last season. And Bouncers hadn't been in the game since Season 5, but I think they're too uninteresting of an item to warrant picking at this event. The TAC SMG though would have been an excellent choice. It hadn't been seen since the first few days of Season 5, so it felt pretty rare, and people had been actually wanting it to come back. I think the TAC could have won, but it's a little weak for an SMG, and it got put up against a weapon that completely outclasses it. So of course, no doubt about it, the Drum Gun was gonna win. It hadn't been seen since Season 5, so it felt like it was worth unvaulting, and it was incredibly strong, so many casual players loved it. It's really no surprise that this is the item that everyone voted for. Once the Drum Gun was broken from its case, everyone was shot out from the vault, launching them high up into the air above Loot Lake. Immediately afterward, the volcano erupted and started shooting mortars of lava, with Retail being the first to be hit. Then, another flaming projectile lobbed across the sky and smacked itself into the front of Polar Peak. And then finally, a volley of lava missiles decimates Tilted Towers, concluding the event. In the aftermath, ash from the eruption is blocking the sun from the sky, and the crash site suffered heavy casualties. Retail Row's suburban site is fine, but the shopping park was hit directly, taking out the entire financial district and the 2 massive food titans with it. The front of Polar Peak is now heavily cracked, and Tilted Towers has been completely demolished. And in an ironic twist of events, the only building that came out untouched was No Sweat Insurance. Since the Drum Gun was the chosen item from the vote, it returned in its full glory, having the same stats as it did from when it was last seen in Season 5. Welcome back, Spray Meta! So yeah, I gotta say, this is one of Fortnite's best live events. It had a perfect blend of interactivity and cinematic awe that many events fail to do, especially in Chapter 1. You had the interactive real-time voting, which was a really cool way to let the community voice what gets put in the game, even if it was a little bit rigged. And then right afterward, watching helplessly as some of Fortnite's most iconic locations get curb stomped in the ground was some of the most cinematic shit ever. This is exactly how you do a live event. It was almost flawless, but there were a lot of technical problems with the event itself. For a lot of people, the event just didn't start, so quite a lot of players didn't get to experience it. Epic couldn't really just rerun the event, so as compensation, everyone who attended it was given the Arcana glider for free. On May 6th, the Marvel collab was over and the endgame LTM was removed and replaced with the floor is lava. We also got our first teaser for Season 9 reading, "The future is unknown," and it showcased the Vendetta skin with a giant inn in the background. On May 7th, the second teaser dropped reading, "The future is bright," and this teaser displayed rocks with an E in the background. And finally, on May 8th, the last day of the season, the final teaser released. It read, "The future is tilted." This image showcased Stratus and had an O in the background, and if you put all three teasers together, it made the word Neo. With that being said, I believe that about covers it for Season 8. Chapter 1 Season 8 ran from February 28th to May 8th, lasting a total of 70 days. Out of all the videos I've made in this retrospective series so far, this is definitely the season I've been the most excited to cover. As I mentioned earlier, I myself never got the chance to play Season 8, like, at all. And out of all the seasons that have happened over Fortnite's lifespan, this is by far the one I knew the least about. So it was incredibly fun for me to fully research and finally get a complete picture of the season I missed out on years ago. And yeah, I'll admit it, I'm quite disappointed in myself that I never gave Season 8 a shot. This season had so many great additions and some really fun gameplay. It's no wonder why many people consider this to be Chapter 1's best season. For starters, the Battle Pass was pretty darn good. It's not the best by all means, but it's incredibly underrated in my opinion, with it having great skins such as Hybrid, Blackheart, and that stupid fucking banana they won't stop making reskins of. This season added the jungle biome to the top right corner of the map, and while not my favorite area, it added a ton of new locations and really filled in a lot of the dead space on that side of the island. Kinda sad to see Lazy Links and Wailing Woods go, but Lazy Lagoon and Sunny Steps were both pretty serviceable replacements. And the Volcano was just a really awesome environmental set piece that doubled as a great bit of rotation, making that corner of the map much more viable to land at. After 8 seasons of Battle Royale, it finally felt like the Chapter 1 map was fully developed. The Season 8 map is hailed by many as the definitive version of the Chapter 1 map, and honestly, I could not agree more. Most all of the dead space has been trimmed off, and many of the bad locations have been replaced with more superior alternatives. Overall, there's a really good diversity of biomes and unique locations scattered around, showing off a bit of history from each respective season. There's a bunch of Season 1 and 2 locations still littered around the map, Lucky Landing from Season 3, Dusty Divot for Season 4, Season 5's Desert Biome, the revamped Loot Lake from Season 6, the Iceberg from Season 7, and now a huge tropical biome for Season 8. It finally felt like you could land just about anywhere and still have plenty of interesting locations to explore without being at a loot disadvantage. There really wasn't much more you could add to this map without further bulldozing more beloved POIs, which would later become an issue with the last 2 seasons of Chapter 1. I'd say the strongest aspect of this season though was the loot pool additions. It was just banger after banger after banger. They did not drop the ball a single time, as every new item was fun, decently balanced, and felt like it had a purpose in the loot pool that made it worth using. The infantry rifle was finally reworked from projectile to hit scan, going from the worst AR in the game to one of the best. Shadow bombs were a great utility item for both stealth engagements and mobility. The poison dart trap was a unique twist on the damage trap that still managed to be just as powerful without being obnoxious. Buried treasure worked almost like a mid-match objective that allowed you to score some crazy loot. The Boomba was a very powerful and long-range explosive weapon, and the Flintlock is generally one of the most fun weapons Fortnite has ever added. It's not only just a strong close-range option, but an amazing utility item. To add on to all that, we also got 2 brand new vehicles this season. The Pirate Cannon was kinda ass, but it was a pretty decent item for rotation. And the Baller might be Fortnite's most creative vehicle they've ever added. Swinging around the map like Spider-Man was a blast and felt super rewarding chaining your grapples together to get some crazy speed. But even when updates didn't give us any significant loot pool changes, we were getting incredibly high quality LTMs like A Royale or Endgame. And we even got reboot vans halfway through the season as an incredibly beneficial gameplay mechanic for team-based modes. They also did a phenomenal job with the story this season. While I did really enjoy the government-focused storyline, I do wish they focused more on the Fire King and the pirates invading the map, since that was, well, what the season was themed around. Regardless though, with the helicopter scouting out the map and the multiple dig sites that required us as a community to team up and excavate, they did a really good job leading up to the big reveal of the vault. And the way they led up to the invaulting was by far the best build-up to a live event ever. You had a bunch of small tasks every few days that required everyone to work together to begin the event. Feeding the volcano, matching colors, breaking it down sexual style, etc. And then after each key was placed, the volcano became a looming threat, getting more and more agitated leading up to the unfolding. And oh my god, what a live event. Fortnite had been playing around with the idea of real-time community-focused goals in VR for the past few seasons, and this event felt like a final culmination of that. So giving us, the players, the power to pick what item comes back to the game was really cool. I know a lot of people like to say the vote was rigged, which I do kind of agree with to an extent. I don't think it was rigged in the sense that the drum gun would have won no matter what, but most of the other options were so bad that it was heavily catered in the drum gun's favor. But nonetheless, this was a really awesome bit of interactivity that really made this event worth playing at the time. Also, the vault itself was a really amazing way to foreshadow Season 9, with Singularity's helmet and the 0 point being inside. It also was just a really cool in-game way to explain what happens to all the items that get vaulted. And then with the end of the event bombing the ever-living shit out of retail and tilted to signal what POIs will change, as well as striking Polar Peak to set up for Caddis escaping, was peak storytelling. I know it didn't have crazy spectacle compared to other Chapter 1 live events like Blast Off or Showdown, but the storytelling and interactivity it had was unmatched. Chapter 1 Season 8 was a great season. There's no really arguing about that. This season had a great map, fantastic gameplay additions, decent battle pass, a wacky yet balanced loot pool, and the story was very good as well, culminating in a fantastic live event. I honestly find it pretty hard to think of anything to criticize about it. Sure, it has its issues, but what season doesn't? For how good of a season this is though, strangely, it's been largely forgotten about in modern day, and I think there's a couple of reasons for that. Chapter 1 is weird because everybody loves and remembers the first 5 seasons with a burning passion, but the last half doesn't have that same nostalgic charm, I guess. Though the 2 seasons people still talk about from the latter half are Season 7 and X, purely for the fact that they were incredibly controversial at the time, and still are. In complete contrast, Season 8 didn't have any big mishaps. Well, that's kind of the problem. While Season 8 did everything exceptionally well, there wasn't really any new additions or features exclusive to the season that made it stand out on its own. Season 5 had the cube rolling around, Season 6 had the flying island, Season 7 had planes. What did Season 8 have? While Season 8 introduced a lot of cool, unique things, there weren't any crazy game-changing features that could only be played in this season alone. While Season 8 is a pretty niche season nowadays, there is still a massive amount of people that regard it as Chapter 1's best season. And it just goes to show that even if the loudest voices don't acknowledge it, that doesn't mean it didn't leave a mark. If you dig just a bit deeper, you're always bound to find hidden treasure. This has been Zfire, and thank you for watching. Before I get out of your hair though, just a few last minute things. If you would like to support my crippling Dr. Pepper addiction, please consider using code Zfire in the item shop. And if you want more Zfire slop while I make you wait several months for the Season 9 video, I do have a Twitter that I occasionally shitpost on. But that's about all I wanted to say. Let me know what you thought about Season 8, and as always, big thank you for watching. Well, I'm gonna head out now. Okay, bye.